In the Trump presidency, Republicans finally succeeded in their machinations to stack the U.S. Supreme Court with hardline anti-abortion conservatives, and then they were able to get through the policy they most wanted. They overturned Roe versus Wade, and that allowed Republican-controlled states all over the country to ban abortion. And even those bans have not been enough for Republicans in many states. Republicans are now proposing in the state of Missouri, for example, that abortion be charged as homicide, that abortion be charged criminally as murder. Republicans in the Missouri House and the Missouri Senate are now proposing murder charges for abortion in legislation that they are bringing up this month. This comes after Republicans have proposed similar legislation in Kentucky and in Georgia and in Arkansas and in South Carolina and in Colorado. Republicans in all of those states have proposed murder charges for abortion, which usually, of course, means life in prison or even the possibility of capital punishment. In Ohio, a young woman is newly facing criminal charges for having had a miscarriage at home. They're bringing criminal charges against her, threatening her with prison for the handling of the fetal remains after she miscarried at home. And in Texas, the case of 31-year-old Kate Cox has played out over these last few days as a Republican fantasy of how they would most like to wield really, 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 really big government. Kate Cox is a mother of two. She's 31 years old. She very much has wanted a third child. She was pregnant with that third child when she learned that it would not be a viable pregnancy, a fatal genetic abnormality. She had already been in and out of the hospital with fairly serious complications in this pregnancy. Her doctor advised her that if she wants to be able to try again, if she and her husband want to try to get pregnant again, to try for another child, which they desperately want, this non-viable pregnancy must be ended by abortion in order to protect her health and potentially to save her life. But Texas bans abortion because Texas is a Republican-controlled state. So Kate Cox had to go to court to try to get an exception from Texas's abortion ban. And a Texas judge ruled late last week that she could have an exception from the abortion ban. She could get this abortion in this special case to preserve her health, to potentially preserve her own life. The Texas Republican Attorney General responded by writing to Kate Cox's doctor and to the Texas hospitals where the doctor has admitting privileges. Texas Attorney General threatening that he would potentially criminally prosecute them if they did the abortion, regardless of that Texas court ruling. He then filed an appeal with the Texas Supreme Court. The Texas Supreme Court only has Republican judges on it. And that all-Republican Supreme Court in Texas promptly agreed to hear the appeal. That stayed the lower court ruling. The practical effect of that is that Kate Cox was once again legally blocked from being able to get an abortion in Texas. And then the Supreme Court just sat on it and did nothing. They blocked the ruling allowing her abortion on Friday, and then they just sat on it all weekend and today. Who knows when they would have got around to finally making some sort of decision about it. She's already 20 weeks pregnant, right? She's been in and out of the emergency room at least 4 times with complications from this pregnancy, but no rush, guys. Today, Ms. Cox's legal counsel, the Center for Reproductive Rights, announced that Ms. Cox finally was effectively forced to flee. She left the state to go to some safer place where there isn't a ban like this one that Republicans have imposed in Texas. Nancy Northup, the chief executive for the Center for Reproductive Rights, which has been representing Ms. Cox in this case, said this. She said, quote, Kate desperately wanted to be able to get care where she lives and recover at home surrounded by family. While Kate had the ability to leave the state, most people do not. And a situation like this could be a death sentence. That was this afternoon. And now tonight, hours after that announcement from the Center for Reproductive Rights, hours after we learned that Kate Cox had to leave the state of Texas so she could get this abortion somewhere else. Tonight, the Texas Supreme Court has nevertheless just issued its ruling in this case. They ruled that the lower court was wrong to give Kate Cox an exception to the ban. They ruled that Kate Cox effectively should have been forced by the government of the state of Texas to carry this pregnancy to term of a baby that would not live, despite the fact that doing so would risk her health, would risk her ability to ever have a child again, and potentially even risk her death. a government would compel that of her and her body, while the Republican Attorney General threatened criminal prosecution of anyone who helped her, in a state where the penalty for helping a woman in this circumstance is up to 99 years in prison. Because, you know, limited government, freedom. Joining us now is Nancy Northup, President and CEO of the Center for Reproductive Rights. It's a group that's been representing Kate Cox in her case against the state of Texas. Ms. Northup, thanks very much for being here.
Good evening. Thank you for covering this.
Did I get any of that wrong?
No, unfortunately, you got it all right. I mean, just imagine, as you went through, what Kate went through this week. First, she had a terrible diagnosis. Then she had to go to court, plead in front of the court, you know, in front of the world, right, because it's on video, to get basic health care. The judge rules that she can, and yet, as you pointed out, Attorney General Paxton says, no, you know, I'm threatening your doctors, I'm threatening the hospitals, and eventually she has to flee the state, as she did today. I mean, we're at the point in the United States where we have reproductive freedom states and we have reproductive oppression states, and one has to flee an oppression state to be able to get basic health care. But that's what Kate has gone through this week. It is unacceptable, but that is what we're living with in post-Roe America.
I know that Ms. Cox has left the state of Texas seeking care elsewhere. I'm not going to ask you, obviously, to disclose anything about the circumstances of where she is or what she had to do, but can you tell us if she's okay?
She's okay. She's had a really, really devastating time. I mean, as you pointed out, all weekend long, waiting and hoping that the Texas Supreme Court would rule that she could go ahead, as the district court ruled, having heard the medical evidence, that she could have the abortion in the state of Texas to preserve her health, to preserve her future fertility. And despite all that, that ruling did not come. It is just simply devastating.
What do you make of the ruling that they issued tonight? I did not know if the case would be considered moot and they would decide that they didn't have to rule once your office had announced that she had left the state and was obtaining the procedure elsewhere. They nevertheless decided to rule. Was that definitely going to happen either way? Do you have a reaction to their ruling?
I mean, the ruling did not give any more clarity and guidance to doctors about when they can perform abortions in the state of Texas. So we're right back into the place that we have been for a very long time. Courts not giving guidance. The state's medical board's not giving guidance. And Attorney General Ken Paxton is running around telling everybody that nothing qualifies under their exception. It also just shows how these medical, you know, health exceptions that these states pass, saying, oh, no, we're compassionate, we have these health exceptions, they don't mean anything because nobody can access them.
This is a difficult question, and please tell me if I'm off base in asking it. But given what Attorney General Ken Paxton did here, after that initial court ruling in Texas, going to the doctors, going to the hospitals where the doctor had admitting privileges, and threatening criminal prosecution of anybody who helped Ms. Cox and her family in this case, is it possible that Ms. Cox and her husband could face like civil suits or charges? Are they potentially liable as Texas residents for somebody like Ken Paxton coming after them, even though they had to leave the state to get this done?
They absolutely should not be. We have a right to travel in this country. You have a right to go to another state and get health care and be under the laws of that state. So that would be extreme intimidation. It would be a misuse of the prosecutorial authority of the state of Texas. But, you know, let's hope that does not happen. And people should know you can go to a reproductive freedom state and get health care that you need.
How does this case, I understand this is or correct me if I'm wrong, was this the first time that somebody has had to seek a court-ordered exception to an abortion ban? Was this the first time?
I think post Dobbs' decision, post the reversal of Roe versus Wade, it was.